Hello, 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 and welcome to Guitar Chat. Again, another Thursday here. As you can see, I have a new look. You you have to change from now and then, but we're very happy, of course, as always, for being here, for sharing the music live and some cool conversations with our guests every Thursday. And of course, as you know already, this show is brought to you by Vegatrem, the best tremolo systems in the market, for sure. And as I always tell you, if you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel, you need to do that because there's certain perks besides watching us every Thursday and watching all the content that we are uploading on a regular basis. You also, if you're subscribed to our channel, and if you leave a comment in one of our live streams or one of our videos, you can get into our giveaway. We do a monthly giveaway. Every month we give away a tremolo for free, completely for free. That's the only thing you need to do, subscribe and leave a comment. And if you hit like to our video, that helps us a lot as well. Also, we are always giving some discount codes during the conversations that we are having with our guests. So just, pay attention to the whole conversation, stick around till the end, because we can tell the code, it's completely random. Let's say it's just when I remember it pretty much. So stick around with us. And especially today, we really have a real treat because today's guest is something else, let me tell you. Okay, so without further ado, this week on Guitar Chat, we have someone who fearlessly works on every aspect of music and does it with huge success. He's an accomplished singer, songwriter, guitar player, engineer, multi-instrumentalist, and his production and songwriting skills have been required for very massive names such as Frank Turner, Fall Out Boy, Pink, Green Day, Weezer, Katy Perry, Taylor Swift, the Wallflowers, or Ed Sheeran, among many others. So please, ladies and gentlemen, welcome Mr. Butch Walker. Hi, Butch. How you doing, man?
Hey, what's happening, man?
Well, it's so great to see you, man. So great having you here. It's a big honor for us having you in the Vegatrem family, because I've been dropping names here, but not only that, but your whole career as an artist is very impressive as well, So I'm
Thank you.
yeah, man, I'm really impressed with your resume and also with your music. The way you sing, the way you write music, it's pretty cool, man. I've been preparing this interview for this week, and I've been digging into your music, and I really love it. So congratulations for that, man.
I really appreciate that, man. It means a lot. That's why I still do it.
Yeah,
at,
well,
fi- at at 51 years old, I've got to have a reason to do it. And if there's one person out there that wants to hear it, I'll keep doing it. So
that's awesome, man. Hey, and you don't look 51 at all, man. It's not because of the rock and roll or what?
yeah, it's rock and roll lifestyle. Don't let anybody tell you that it takes years off of you as much as it takes them off.
Man, I totally agree with that. Regardless of the life on the road, which everybody knows it's pretty hard, but regardless of that, the other day I was talking to a bass player friend of mine, and he's 47. He looks like, I don't know, maybe early 40s or late 30s, and I was like, come on, man. This is crazy. And he was telling me the same. He was like, that's the rock and roll, man. It's probably pretty much the attitude, maybe, right? Something like
it,
that.
it it's pretty funny, when I go on tour, I definitely feel better, feel younger. There's just a lot of it's weird. It can be very unhealthy if you do it wrong on the road,
True.
but well, after years of like doing it wrong, I've just started trying to do it right now. So when I go out, it's like it's almost like it's a diet plan and a workout plan all in one.
Yeah, that's right. That's how you do it, man. That's it's pretty shocking for many people because of course you always have the stereotype, right? The sex, drugs, rock and roll, and all that thing, right? But what I've found in my life as a musician as well, it's more of the other side, you know, people trying to stay healthy, people working out and, you know, going to bed early. I mean, it's crazy, man.
Yeah,
It's
after you pass a certain point in your age,
yeah.
you have to treat it like a you know, a health regimen, or else, you know, it will start aging you and it'll reverse and go backwards. So yeah.
That's right. That's cool, man. That's very nice. Okay, well, let's you know, I wanna get to know you better. I've been, you know, as I said before, I've been reading, I've been doing some research, and I've read that you are a huge Kiss fan. Are they the reason why you became a musician in the first place? Well, I suppose more bands, but especially Kiss. Do you really like them?
Oh, Kiss?
Yeah, Kiss.
Well, I mean, I loved them when I was a kid.
Okay.
You know, it doesn't just like anything, you go through life's phases of what band is important to you at the time, or what band is you're obsessed with musically at the time.
Uh huh.
I don't think I'm still obsessed with Kiss musically, but
No, of course.
but I
Yeah, but
definitely give them a lot of credit for putting me into the they put me right into the shit. You know, I really wanted to learn how to play music because of seeing them play live. And when I saw them play live when I was 8 years old, it was at the height of their bombastic performance. You know, it was the Kiss Alive 2
okay.
album.
Uh-huh.
Which would have been in support of the Love Gun record, and that was in 1977. So that was probably at the height of their like outrageousness and
Yeah.
and their popularity as well. So it's pretty I was pretty lucky to for that to be my first concert, because I mean, it could have easily have been Air Supply, or
Yeah.
you know, or you know, something that was not as impactful for an 8 year old that was like into things that were loud. So
Yeah.
it definitely grabbed me by the heart, and it made me want to do it for the rest of my life. So I definitely have them to thank daily.
that's that's great. I mean, yeah, I'm pretty sure that must have been a huge impact, right? In an 8 year old, watching those guys, you know, with the outfits and everything, and the lights and the loudness, the rock and roll and everything, you know, that of course for a kid, I know nowadays it's different, right? Because music is not that important anymore, at least for I don't know if I'm wrong, but I think, you know, kids nowadays they have more options, right? And maybe musicians don't cause the same impact as they did maybe a few years ago, and I'm pretty sure that was huge for you, right? Watching them, and maybe not only for their style of music, but just for the sake of being on stage and being loud and holding a guitar, right?
Sure. Back, I guess way back then, there was less options. You know,
Yeah.
there was less forms of entertainment as well. So now it's like, you know, at least in America, I don't know about over there, and I guess I hope not. But we have like, you know, the Kardashian family, which could be as influential as entertainers to
Yeah.
someone. I don't know what it would inspire them to be, except for famous and rich. Uh,
Uh-huh.
but but that's sort of unfortunately the culture now, is that there's just way more things, and there's also in music there's you know, way more artists now available to
That's
see
right.
and hear, so it can be overwhelming. But I mean, it just takes one, you know.
Uh-huh.
There's probably a kid out there right now going to see, you know, either Machine Gun Kelly or Jason Isbell, and they'll pick up a guitar or a microphone or
Yeah.
a drum the next day, and then it's on for
Uh-huh.
them.
You just need that to spark the fire, right? To
That's right. That's right.
get
It
it
doesn't.
going.
Yeah, it
Uh-huh.
doesn't necessarily matter who it is, or what it is, as long as it's something musically. I think, you know, like my son, he could care less. He gives a shit about, um, you know, popular music. He doesn't
Uh-huh.
care about modern music or popular music at all. His favorite, he's 14, and his favorite things to listen to are like Frank Sinatra and
Really?
yeah,
Wow.
and like it's weird. Like he'd rather listen to that and old country and western and jazz and standards, and I'm like, oh God, like this is awesome because I don't
Yeah.
feel. First of all, I don't feel like a square dad. I don't feel like the uncool dad. You know, where like I'm listening to my rock and roll records and my kids like listening to hip hop, going like, "Oh, Dad, you're so not cool." But like it's not like that at all. Actually, it's kind
Yeah.
of cool because I never turned him on to any music. He discovers it in video games or whatever, and then he becomes obsessed. You know, I took him. He loves Green Day, of
Okay.
course, and I
Yeah.
took him to see Green Day, Fall Out Boy, Weezer
Uh-huh.
at the big the big Hella Mega tour at Dodger Stadium in LA. I had just gotten over COVID, and luckily I was able to still take him. And so
Okay.
we went, and he already knew several Green Day songs, even though he didn't listen to a lot of modern music. He also, but they could be considered also modern and classic because they still put out records, but they've got 20 years of putting out records.
That's
And
right. That's right.
same with Fall Out Boy. He loved them, but he wasn't as familiar with Weezer, and he left obsessed with them. And I was like, son, I'd worked on all three of those bands' records, and
That's amazing.
I tried to get you to listen to them,
I'm pretty
but
sure. I'm pretty sure after that you were the coolest dad ever, right? When
he. Luckily, we haven't hit that wall yet where he's like, no more
okay,
dad, no more mom. They're not cool.
got it.
I'm still cool to him a little bit.
Awesome, man. I mean, probably that's gonna happen because it's normal. They're teenagers, but afterwards, probably he's gonna come back and he's gonna realize how cool his dad is, man. At least we here think his dad is very very cool, man.
Oh man, it makes a big difference. I think. I feel like you gotta be there and be impressionable for them as the best way you can before they don't care anymore, and
Yes.
before they want to leave and be
Uh-huh.
independent and do their thing. So
Yeah.
I'm working double time trying to get it, trying to be a good influence on him as much as I can.
That's cool, man. That's pretty cool. Well, okay, so you were born and raised in Georgia, right?
I was born and raised in a town called Cartersville, Georgia, which is it's about an hour north of Atlanta, 3 hours south of Nashville,
Okay.
Tennessee, and so which is where I currently mostly live.
Okay.
I still come back and forth to California a lot because I have to make records
Mm.
out in California all the time, and that's when I'm producing for other people. So the town I grew up in was pretty small, and
Okay.
at the time it was very small. It's grown like 3 times the size now, but at the time it was small and kind of more rural, and now it's more suburban of Atlanta. But still very small town and kind of a small town mentality back then in the 70s and 80s and
Got it.
90s even. And I just
Yeah.
felt like I graduated high school in '88,
Uh-huh.
and I knew my whole life I was gonna leave
Okay.
because at the time there was no music scene for me there, especially even in Cartersville, but definitely even in Atlanta at the time. You couldn't play your own music, you couldn't play original music.
Oh, wow.
um, no,
Okay.
you had to play like covers in
Course.
bars.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
was like, well, how are we going to get discovered if I don't get out of and play my own music somewhere? So it was like, okay, New York or LA. And at the time, the kind of music we were doing in my band when I was in high school was like, we were like like a pop metal band, like a hair metal band.
Okay. Okay.
And that scene was huge in LA. So it's kind of where it started. So we always had our sights set on moving out there. So we did, and we moved out to Hollywood the day after I graduated high school.
Nice.
And
How old
yeah,
were you? I'm sorry. How old were you when you moved there?
I was 17, 18. So
Wow.
I think I was 18. Um, and so we moved out there, and this was pre-internet. This was the 90s, this was the 80s. So we didn't have like technology on our side to find an apartment
Oof. Okay.
or anything. We had to go out. We had to go out there completely blind to
Wow,
everything,
man.
like not knowing anything, like not knowing what street was the next street, not knowing the good side of town to try to find an apartment on, not knowing anything. So you basically just got up there and just asked strangers on the
Wow.
street. And
That's a
luckily there was
bold
a
move, man.
well, and luckily there was a every other person you met on the Sunset Strip looked just like you because they were
Okay.
all in hair metal bands. So it was
Okay.
not hard to like find, your
Yeah.
people. And it wasn't, first of
Uh-huh.
all, it was wonderful because at the time I didn't fit in. I felt like I never fit in my town. Even though there was good people there, I didn't feel like I was one of those people. Um,
Got it.
I was the only kid in my town, really, pretty much that especially in my age, that was in a band or like wanted to play rock music and had long hair. So when I moved out to LA and found an entire farm of these people,
Yeah.
I was like, oh God, I'm never leaving. This is incredible. And so,
Yeah.
so luckily, we made it work for us.
Okay.
And then I'll skip ahead and say that a few years later, after we got signed in our band and everything, we wanted to go back to Georgia and establish some roots there because Georgia was always home. But we wanted to do
Okay.
it in Atlanta because Atlanta, there was starting to finally be an original music scene where
Got it.
you wouldn't get like kicked off the stage for playing your own music. So yeah,
Man,
I know
that's
it's
rough.
weird.
Huh?
Yeah, I saw a meme the other day. Somebody, or not even a meme, just somebody posted a picture backstage at a show that said, "If you play more than two covers, you will be asked to stop playing." And I'm like, I remember when if the sign said, if you play more than two originals, you're getting asked to leave."
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
so it's just
Wow.
it flipped, and so we went to Atlanta, and that was where I spent the next better part of my life, like 16 years in Atlanta, and the
Uh-huh.
music scene was awesome there and just incredible, and I felt like I had a home and a village and a tribe and lots of people to connect with and be influenced by, and
Uh-huh.
it was great.
That's beautiful, man. That's awesome. I really think, I don't know if you agree with me, but I really think that a musician or a songwriter or an artist in general needs a scene to thrive, you know, because you're not only, I mean, when you're writing songs, you're all the time being fed by the stuff that you're living, right? And if you're not part of a scene, it's like there's something missing, you know. Like for instance, as I told you before, I spent some years in Austin, Texas, and of course Steve Ray Vaughan,
Oh,
he's like God over there, right? And
yes.
but when I was there, I understood more his life because I knew his scene, you know, and I got to know his environment and everything, and then I understood more the whole thing, right? Would you agree with that? Do you think that's important for a musician to be part of a scene, to be part of a movement?
Oh, I think so. I mean, I guess. I mean, I think that it's good when you're coming up to embrace maybe some like-minded people and some people that kind of share the same vision and everything. But I don't think you have to necessarily be tied to one village of music. One style.
Got it.
That was something that never interested me. Well, I take that back. It took me a minute. When I lived in LA, we were
Okay.
obviously it was a hair metal village, and
Okay.
and you didn't stray too far from that pack. But I was also 19 years old,
Yeah,
and
it's normal at that age, right?
yeah, well, and you should find your people, find your village, and find your thing. But then it was like, okay, I guess if I'm going to expand my horizons a little bit, it's okay to like listen to other kinds of music and take it in and maybe even hang out with different types of musicians and ones from different kinds of bands and stuff. And that really happened when I went back to Atlanta. When we moved back to Atlanta with our band, which
Uh-huh.
eventually dissolved and kind of morphed into a couple of other bands
Yeah.
and styles. We were influenced daily by a lot of the talent there. And also, what was cool about coming up in Atlanta was it was a melting pot, as they call it here,
Cool.
of styles. Kind of like
Uh-huh.
Austin, whereas
Yeah.
like you could have like hip hop guys loved hanging out with rock and roll guys, and
Yeah.
vice versa.
Okay.
And there was alternative and metal, and like our friends were people from like southern rock, metal bands, alternative bands, punk bands, hip hop. I mean, by the time I left Atlanta, you know, kind of against my will, I had to leave about 15 years ago to go back to California, because that's when producing started taking off for me, and I had to be where I was getting the most work.
Okay.
So I was going back and forth from Atlanta to LA, but Atlanta at that time was like the hip hop and R&B scene was through the roof. It was insane. I mean, you had
Nice.
like in the 90s, you had every hip hop and R&B act was coming out of Atlanta, like
Wow.
by and large. And
Mhm.
you know, this is when you had the Goody Mob and Outkast and Shakespeare and the Dungeon Family and all these guys that were East Point, Atlanta, and were really coming up and like making a big difference for the hip hop community there.
Okay.
And they had, you know, they had CeeLo and all these other artists all together in a conglomerate, but they also did their own records, which was sort of like Voltron. You know, it was like all these like different like you know, like the Avengers or something. They had like all their like they were a force together, but they were also amazing individually and had their own styles.
That's
and
pretty
and
cool.
and I was hanging out with those guys. Those guys were hanging out at my studio and stuff. CeeLo would come over and like hang out or like record at my studio, and you know, and Andre would just be like stand next to me at a rock club from
Nice.
Andre 3000.
Yes, from
And
Outcast, right?
yeah, and like would just be sitting there at a rock club in a basement by himself, like, you know, no posse, just like doing his thing. And that to me was a awesome way to like come up in a music scene where you didn't feel like there was any rules, and you
Uh-huh.
didn't feel like you had to become part of any sort of clique or gang or whatever. You could be an individual, but you could still do your music and the kind of
Uh-huh.
music you did. But
Yeah.
it was okay to blend and hang out with other people.
Yeah, but actually, what I was saying before about belonging to the scene or something like that. Actually, what I meant was something like that. I mean, not in terms of style, but in terms of things going on when you get out of your house. Like you said, you could find someone doing hip hop and hanging out with rockers, or but I mean, having something like that, because there are other places in which sadly there are no scenes at all, right? So, and if you're a musician and if you're in a place in which there's really nothing going on, I think it can take a toll on you in some ways, right?
Yeah, it can just limit you. You know,
Uh-huh.
it can limit your mind, and you need your mind to not be limited if you want to have a career, I think, in music, and if you want to be able to like look down the road 5 years from now and say, I might not be this music might not even matter 5 years from now, and maybe I want to try something different. Maybe I'll be tired of it by then. You know,
Uh-huh.
not everybody can like wake up and just play, you know, be, play Ramones songs the rest of their
Yeah.
life and be fulfilled. Sure,
Yeah.
they're fucking awesome and the
Oh yeah.
records are great. AC/DC all day long. I
Yeah.
love that they have a formula and it doesn't stray from that, and it's beautiful. But that's not
Yeah.
everybody. I mean, look at the amount of bands that actually do that. Not many. And you
True.
know, props to them for being that way, but that's just not how a lot of people are wired. Some people are wired to they need to experiment.
Yes.
They need to dabble and try other things. And that's definitely me. I grew up with every kind of music you could imagine in our house because we were in a small town
Uh-huh.
where the only thing we had was the radio,
Okay.
and by 1980 MTV. And so
Oh yes.
there was no one kind of music playing, and I had two older sisters, so whatever they were listening to, whatever my mom was listening to, it was Creedence Clearwater 1 minute, the Bee Gees the next, Barry Manilow and Elvis 1 minute, Peter Frampton and Ozzy Osbourne the next, and it was just all over the map. And so
Uh-huh.
you didn't, you know, I didn't grow up thinking that, oh, that music sucks, that music sucks, that only this one's good. I just was like, no, that's a great group for the kind of music they do. That's a great artist
Yeah.
for the kind of music they do. And so I think it helped with my production career,
That's right. Hmm.
because it allows me to jump around and from different style artists and produce and kind of already have in the back of my mind what it needs to sound like
The kind of sound that you're going for, right?
because I absorbed a lot of that growing up, you know, as like And I love, and I still go back and listen to those records that we listen to in the household, you know?
That's awesome, man. That's beautiful. So tell me a little bit about how someone starts producing other bands, because I suppose when you were starting up with your different bands and everything, you were interested in the recording things and the production things. But how do you start producing other bands? How did you start doing that?
Well, I always had a recording device of some sort around. When I could afford it, I bought a 4-track cassette recorder
Hmm.
with my grass cutting money, um, and I think I paid $200 for it. It was a Ross 4-track, and then I worked my way up to a to actually it's right here behind the glass in a glass case.
Okay.
That's a it's a it's a TAC, basically a Tascam, you know, four
Okay.
track that,
Okay.
and that's actually not the actual one, but I ended up getting one years ago on the Reverb website
Huh? Oh yeah, it's the
because
website.
I
Yeah.
wanted to make a record again on a 4-track and remember how I got my start and how I learned how to multi-track record, where like it's 4 tracks only. So I would sit in my parents' workshop out behind our house and had it set up with just cheap microphones, whatever I could afford,
Yeah.
and just learning that like, oh, I'm gonna have to put all the drums on track 1, and I'm gonna play the song. We're gonna play the song down, and then we're gonna record the bass to track 2, and then track 3 we're gonna record a guitar track. Then we're gonna bounce all 3 of those to track 4, and then I'll have those first 3 tracks available again to put vocals on, and that's kind of how I started, and making some pretty embarrassing sounding demos, but at the same time, that's how you learn. I think you can go to school for it, but you won't learn everything that you need to know. You certainly won't learn how to deal with artists, egos,
Yeah.
people, A&R guys and girls, managers. These are all things that when you become a producer, they don't teach you in school, and you have to learn from experience when you get in the room with them. But
Uh-huh.
um, but the recording part, you can pretty much learn everything online in
Yeah.
like 5 seconds and do it on a laptop, which makes a lot of the work very easy.
Very easy.
And I
That's right.
and I'm all for that, and I think it's great. But that's how I got my start. Was I started by producing people on a 4-track, and then I worked my way up to an 8-track, and then a 16-track, and then I was like, it was basically just like sell everything and buy this one little thing, and then blah
Yeah.
blah blah. And so next thing you know, I'm making demos in my parents' garage. I've got it all soundproofed as much as I can.
Cool.
Uh,
So you were when you were still living with your parents, you were already producing bands in your town, maybe, or
well, yeah,
not?
but so this was no. So this was cut to later. That was before, yeah, before I moved to LA when I was still living with my parents. And
Okay.
then when I moved to LA and we couldn't afford like hardly an apartment to
Okay.
ourselves. So it was sort of like you had to kind of, I had to take a sabbatical from being able to record in a real studio. So when we moved back to Atlanta, I was
Okay.
able to convert my parents' garage. I still lived in Atlanta, but I drove up to Cartersville every day
Oh,
because
got it.
because I couldn't afford a garage separately to turn into a studio in Atlanta. So my
Yeah.
parents let me use their garage again. And so in the 90s I had an 8-track, set up, 16-track maybe, 8-track, I can't remember. And I produced some demos for a band that was called Crawl Space out of
Okay.
Atlanta, and those demos got them signed to their record deal, and
Ah.
they had to change their name, so they changed it to Seven Dust, and so they were
Oh man, that's awesome.
yeah, and so they became this pretty influential metal band,
Of course, yeah.
and local Atlanta heroes as well, and so they basically that started getting people curious to come like record with me. And at the time I came back to Atlanta even after our band had fallen apart and was not really I didn't have a dollar to my name. So I was having to record bands for like $200 a day, and I would do that out of my parents' garage. and did enough demos where, you know, it started making some noise. And then I recorded my own stuff. And when I recorded my own stuff for this new project that I had called The Marvelous Three,
Yeah.
I did a song all kind of, you know, on a little computer, and it was a Pro Tools early version of Pro Tools, and
Okay.
I learned it while we would be on the road 200 days a year. I'd come home on the Sundays and spend Sunday, Monday, Tuesday when we weren't gigging, learning how to record to Pro Tools, and
Wow.
and I recorded a song. I recorded a record that for that what was then a side project, and it had a song called "Freak of the Week" on it,
Yeah.
and the local radio station in Atlanta started playing it, and it spread really quickly and
Uh-huh.
started playing. They started playing it all over the country, and it became like a top five hit at radio before we even had a record out or a record deal.
Wow.
Um,
That's
and
the
it was a
song itself.
song, and it was
Uh-huh.
a song that I did literally in a living room, you know,
Wow, man.
on a computer, and but with all real instruments. And so I started getting calls from labels going, "Hey, did you produce that?" Yeah, I'd be like, "Yeah." "Did you engineer it?" "Yes." "Did you write it?" "Yes." And so people asked me to start doing that for their bands, and then that's where it all took off.
Man, that's beautiful. That's awesome. So, would you think that when people call you to produce, they call you because you are the whole package? I mean, you can help to write song, you can engineer, you can play all the instruments. Do you get called because of that, or do you think it's because the kind of ideas that you have, the versatility you have? Because of course, you've been able to work with bands like Seven Dust, and then you've produced with very mainstream pop acts as well, which is stylistically is very different, right? What do you think? What's the uh, let me see if I can say this word. Sorry about that, man.
No, that's
Uh,
okay.
uh, my question would be: do you think you get called because you are able to do everything?
I think so. I mean, I think I get calls for that, yes, and that's fun because, you know, I realize that I realize there's a fortunate side of that where not a lot of producers have that ability. I know a lot of
Uh-huh.
producers are either just really good engineers, some of them are just really good therapists, some
Okay.
are really great with vocalists, some are really
Okay.
great. Maybe they're a great guitar player, or they're a great keyboard player, or they're a great drummer. Sometimes they're really good with computers and they're good programmers. And sometimes that's all you get with a producer. Sometimes they don't even know the first thing about songwriting and they rely on the artist to really do that, or somebody on the outside to come in.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's all they are, is a songwriter. And I think the role of producer is very vague. It's vast.
Yeah. Yes.
It can mean a lot of things. Me,
Uh-huh.
I just really admired the people I admired coming up were, you know, everyone everyone uh, from Prince to Rick Rubin, who couldn't be more opposite,
Yeah.
because Rick's not really, he doesn't call himself a musician or an engineer. He's
Okay.
just really good with artists and knows when a record is wrong or right.
Okay.
And he's very good at also the big picture. He can like pair the right people together to make
Uh-huh.
good results. Prince, on the other hand, was, you know, micromanager and would do every single thing himself.
Yes.
Uh, and I was that appealed to me growing up. You know, I wanted to learn how to do that because I just didn't know if I would ever have a dollar to my name. I didn't know if I'd ever have any money
Hmm.
to be able to afford the luxury of paying people to do stuff. So I was like, shit, I guess I just want to learn how to do it myself so I don't have to rely on anybody.
Yeah.
And also I really wanted to be able to make my own records, and like, you know, I wanted to be able to like sit in a room with a recorder and at the end of the day make a great record where I might not be a master of any particular thing or
Yeah.
instrument, but what they call a jack of all trades, you
That's right.
know,
Uh-huh.
that appealed to me. And so I feel like I do get calls to make records, especially if it's like just let's call it just a solo artist where it's just a singer, and
Okay.
they want to come in and have somebody help them write or finish the songs, or if they have the songs already finished and they're fully realized and they're great, then they need me to help them produce it and record it. And sometimes I'll be the only band on it. I'll be the bass player, guitar player, drummer, keyboard player, percussionist, background singer, the whole thing. um, and I of course love that because it's fun.
Yeah, right.
It's like having the ultimate playground, to do all that. But then sometimes I just get called to be a member in the room that is like a fourth or fifth member or something, or a sixth member,
Yeah.
and help make decisions
Got
that
it.
might impact the songs or the record as a whole. And that's been, depending on who I work with, it's a case by case basis.
What happens when you're in the studio with an artist and all of a sudden they bring an idea that you think it's completely awful, and it's like they're gonna wreck the whole record with it? What happens? How do you manage that?
Well, you don't win every argument, that's for sure. You can't
Okay.
win them all. And certainly you also can't, like, you don't want to also, you want to make sure that that it's their record at the end of the day, not yours.
Got it.
Now, sure, there might be a lot of people that, and I've had this happen to me several times where somebody will hear a record and then they'll yell at the producer because they hated it. And they'll say, "Oh, it's your fault. You ruined my favorite band." And I'm like, "Bro, I only did what the artist wanted me to do.
Uh-huh.
At the end of the day, it's their record, and I'll own up to it, no problem. If I especially but I've lost many arguments in the studio because an artist is very headstrong about doing things their way,
Yes.
and sometimes that means you gotta split and you gotta break up because because you may never, what good is my skill set in the studio to that person if I'm not going to be able to do any of it. Like
Yes.
if I'm not going to be able to help them make any decisions, and I'm just turning knobs and getting sounds and going, "Oh yeah, no, that sounds great. What did you think?" That's not necessarily what I do.
Uh-huh.
I'm pretty opinionated, but I like when it works, and I like when an artist comes in and maybe they have a bold new direction they want to go,
Uh-huh.
and they'll do it, and I'll support it, and I'll do it with them. And then sometimes that means the fans will yell at you because they think they think you fucked it up. But
Yeah.
if I had $1 for every time somebody said that, and I'd be like, "Hey, that was their demo. We actually released the demo. I didn't even do anything to the fucking song." That's happened so many times.
Um,
But like I said, I don't like to throw the artist under the bus, so they say.
yeah.
I actually will take full credit if I mess something up, but I just try not to mess it up. I try to at least walk away from a record happy, and that
Yes.
the artist is happy, and most importantly, the artist has to be happy, because I could make 10, 20, 30, 40, 100 more records after that artist's career is dead and gone. That might
Yes.
be their last record they ever get to make. For some reason, God
Yeah.
forbid, that
Yeah.
something goes really bad, or that record is not accepted and the career takes a dump and they're done, or whatever. Maybe they just give up and quit. That you
Yeah.
don't want their last experience making a record to be awful, and for
Yes.
them to be regretting what they did or regretting that they didn't get their way.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Man, that's I'm learning a lot. Thank you very much, because this is pretty interesting, man. I also want to talk about your songwriting skills, because I've heard very, very deep stuff, very, very beautiful stuff. And I know you also write along with other artists, or for other artists. So when you write a song for an artist, do you write it thinking about the artist himself, or herself that's gonna sing it, or do you have them written beforehand, and you present them to the songs to them? How do you do that?
Well, there's really no rules to that. Sometimes I've used a song idea that was left over that I wanted to use for even one of my records,
Uh-huh.
and
Yeah.
I've used it for somebody else, and it's gone on to have some, some success. There's also, I don't sit around and write songs thinking, oh, this would be good for Rihanna or this would be good for whoever I've worked with. I've never worked with Rihanna, but like I'm saying, this I don't write songs like that. I'm not like I don't wake up and write a song every day. Like there's songwriters that they have to do that to feel like they're doing something and feel like they're being productive. They have to have their schedule booked Monday through Friday, and they have
Uh-huh.
to write a song every day. And I don't do that. I feel like I would just write garbage because I don't feel like I've got the talent to like really like hit the nail on the head if out of the blue every single day. It has to be something that's inspiring to
Uh-huh.
me to write about. And I'll also know when I'm writing something for somebody if it's for me or if it's for somebody else, because you can get more personal when you're writing something from your own perspective that happened to you or for you or about you or whatever. But you have to be a little bit more broad and more vague when you're
Uh-huh.
writing songs for other people, because
Yeah.
you can't always put yourself in someone else's shoes and know what they're thinking and what they've been through personally. So the only time that happens is when you're actually in the room with the artist with the intention on writing a song. And when we're
Uh-huh.
when we're having the intention of writing a song for an artist for their record, there might be some talk beforehand about like something that might inspire. Like they might come in and go like, oh man, I had the worst thing happen to me today, and they'll tell me, and then that will become the song. That's very common.
Okay.
um, or when you find out about them a little more, maybe you. But I try not to go like, here, I wrote this down yesterday when you were talking about this because I think this is what you would say. It's
Yeah.
really hard to do that because it's also imposing. I mean,
Yeah.
you're kind of just shoving a bunch of information into an artist's face and saying, here, this is for you.
Yeah.
Sing this, So, and not every artist is that way. Some are very personal, and some are just like, give me a song, I'll just sing the shit out of it.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's really different every time.
Yeah, man, that's pretty interesting. I've always been curious about that, because for instance, in my experience, I think I've never wrote for anybody else. So that's why I wanted to ask that question. Okay, man. So let's talk a little bit about guitars as well. About gear, uh, because I know. I mean, you told me already that you learn to use Pro Tools, very early. So, are you more a kind of vintage vibe kind of guy, or do you enjoy the perks of new technologies? What's your style? I would say with that.
I love both. I'm not
Oh,
like one of those purists that is like, oh, I've got to record it to tape because it's so authentic. Um,
yeah,
Fuck that. I get so mad that that's like the mentality for people, because quite honestly, almost every single person that records to tape because they say it sounds better still ends up using Pro Tools and still ends up doing stuff in the box and still
yeah,
ends up going to digital, and it ends up being listened to on a streaming digital,
uh huh,
platform, or a compact disc that's also digital. Now,
yeah,
if your end game is to like record it all analog and make it do nothing but touch vinyl at the end of the day when it's mastered, and congratulations, you did it. But like that's just not for me. I grew up on tape and recording analog because that's all there was.
uh huh,
So I learned on that, and I almost feel like that it's better to learn from that format because it's harder. It's not only harder, but you've got to. And most people will tell you this that do record analog, vintage stuff or whatever, is that it's harder. You've got to actually be good. You've got to be good because the end result doesn't lie. There's no auto tune
that's
when you're
right.
recording, and you could probably manipulate it going in, but most people know it's like you're recording. What we have a saying that it's like shit in is shit out. So so if you record crap going in, it's going to
Yeah,
sound like crap going out. It doesn't matter if your drummer sucks and can't play in time. your drummer's going to sound like he sucks and plays out of time. You
Yeah,
can't fix it.
that's
Uh,
right.
and so I'm glad that I learned that way, because I feel like it makes you try a little harder at getting better as a musician, and a singer. Because shit, when we were making records on tape back in the day without any auto tune or anything like that, you really could tell on a record if somebody couldn't sing.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
and now literally anyone can be a singer. Anyone, you
yeah.
can literally just like, you could sing one note and somebody could like make a melody out of it, and that happens all the time, especially in pop music. But it's not, that's, I don't go that extreme with that side of it. That's not my world either. I'm not really a fan of like making records science. I don't want them to be like a science project where I have to be like, oh man, that was so fun, I took this big pile of garbage and made it sound perfect, you know.
Yeah,
Like that's not fun for me. It's not fun for me to get a vocal that's like all just crazy out of tune and out of time, and then have to sit there and manipulate and fix it for like 5 hours. I'm
that's not very artistic, right?
No,
That's
and I think there's people that are wired that way that love that, and they love to do that stuff. And
yeah,
more power to them, and I'll be glad to hand it off to them. But honestly, I just don't try to work with artists that can't sing and can't play. It's like,
yeah,
life's too short, and the time is too short. So it's like, I don't want to. That's why records used to take, a year to make back in the day, because sometimes it took them that long to get the results great.
get it right
Yeah,
to
because they
sing
might not
well,
have.
to play
Yeah,
well.
they
Yeah,
might not have had people that were up to caliber playing and singing it, in the studio. And it's a different thing in the studio than it is live. Some people go in the studio and they can't play or sing at all, but they get on stage and it's amazing. And it's
yes,
just it's a comfort and a confidence thing. But to answer your question more, and I'm sorry I didn't, was I don't care how it gets recorded as long as it comes out sounding great at the end. I don't care. I've recorded stuff on 4-track. I've recorded stuff on tape. On 2-inch tape. I've recorded stuff on GarageBand in a laptop. I've
wow.
recorded stuff on Pro Tools, and all of it has ended up on records. And and no one would be able to tell me that, like, anybody that thinks that some know-it-all that thinks they're like some professional that comes in and goes, oh, are those modeled guitars or are those amps? And I could literally tell them, I could lie to them, which I have, and say, oh, that's all like mic'd up real amplifiers, when it's really a modeled amp. And they'll go like, oh yeah, I can tell,
I can
sounds
tell.
sounds really warm and authentic. And I'll be like, yeah, yeah, I used basically a software for the guitar.
Yeah.
But like, I'll use anything. I mean, I've got line 6 helixes. I've got a UA aux that I use for cabinet simulations,
A
and
beautiful tool.
I'll run my real guitar amp heads through. I'll run my
Yeah.
real guitar amps through real speakers and have real microphones on them, like,
Uh-huh.
so. And they all end up on records at the end of the day, all of them. And it just depends on what's going on that day. Let's say there's a lot of musicians in the room, and I need to record a guitar part really quickly, and I'll just plug it into a modeler,
Yeah.
and then it sounds great, and then we won't change it, and we'll keep it, and it'll be on the record because the part was great. I mean,
Uh-huh.
if you knew, you might, but a lot of people don't. If you knew how many records from even back in the day, in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, before computers for recording came along, where they actually used like a cassette demo part and used it
Wow.
and lined it up with the actual re-recording of it. Like,
Yeah.
they've done that all the time. Like, where
And
they'll use a vocal, they'll use the background vocals, they'll use a guitar solo from a demo,
uh-huh.
or I do it all the time. I've used a vocal sung into an iPhone voice note for a vocal
Oh
on a
man.
record, because we couldn't get it any better. And
Wow.
it didn't sound right
Yeah.
in front of a pristine high quality microphone when they went back to redo it. So there's no rules.
Man, this is so beautiful. I'm learning so much, and I'm really, really, genuinely glad that we're having this conversation, because you're kind of blowing my mind. I knew I was gonna be, I knew, but this is pretty a very eye-opening experience for me, and I'm really glad that we're talking about this. I also wanna talk about a song that you have in one of your records that's called Record Store. Uh, and if I'm not wrong, you recorded that with just one microphone, the acoustic guitar, singing at the same time.
Yeah.
Can you tell me, is that one of the things you were talking about before? One of the things that you in the demo already thought that it was good enough?
Yeah, I just written the song and I went in and wanted to just track it. And so luckily that's kind of one of the beauties of having I have my own studio set up where all the mics are always on. And
Uh-huh.
I just came in and it was actually this microphone right here. It was a
Oh, okay.
Soyuz 017. And
Okay.
I actually ended up, it was live like here. And
Hmm.
I cranked up the gain on it so it would pick me up back here, and I sat about 5 feet away from it,
Got it.
and I sat with an acoustic guitar, and I sang the song and played it, and it just sounded to me like I didn't think I was gonna ever be able to re-record it and make it any better. So
Got it.
my friend Suzanne came in and played violin on it and sang the background vocals on top of that one
Uh,
track. So
Nice.
essentially, it's
Yeah.
3 tracks on that song. So
I think did you use a pad as well, maybe?
oh yeah, there's probably yeah. So far, yeah. Thank you.
So I think I heard about as well. But I really enjoyed that story, because I think I saw it on a video that you were talking about this, and I was like, man, I think this. I mean, it's so cool, doing music like that. It's so cool because you're keeping it real, I would say, and that's very, very important for me. Very, very important.
Uh,
So yeah, man. I also want to talk about this thing that you have. The first thing when someone goes to your website, it's a record that I don't know if you did on during quarantine. It's a American Love Story. uh and also there's a video in which you play the whole album live from the studio. Tell me a little bit about that experience.
well, the record is a rock opera, which that means it's a concept record, so it's one story from beginning to end.
Okay.
Uh, and I did the record a couple of years before I actually released it, and I just sat
Oh,
on
okay.
it. I just never did anything with it because I was like, nobody needs to hear a fucking rock opera. Like I was like, but at the time, I had some things to get off my chest because we've had some pretty crazy things, uh, you know, happen in the past 5 years in this country,
Yeah.
um, and a lot of light brought to the attention of problems we have, and so I kind of made it this story about growing up, loosely based on my life experience growing up in a small town in the South, and I just sat on it because I just didn't know if it was something that would have been anyone cared about, and
Yeah.
or if I should put it out. And when we finally put it on the schedule to come out, a lot of things started getting worse and worse and worse last year in the country, and
Yeah.
including a pandemic. So just went ahead and released it, and out into the wild. And yeah, I definitely, sadly, the subject matter did not age. It did not become irrelevant. It became more relevant. So I just I didn't get to tour on it or anything, but there again, how do you tour on a rock opera? You kind of got to play the whole thing.
That's right.
and
From
I
the
did I
beginning to the end, right?
Yeah, and it's not like that's my only record. If I went out and toured, it would be like, oh shit, everybody's gonna be yelling for me to play synthesizers, or something. And
Yeah.
I'll just be like, no, 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 this is this. So I ended up doing it live on. I did a live stream where I played it live, one man band from beginning to end, which is how
Uh-huh.
I was going to take it on the road and do it.
Nice. Okay. Wow, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah.
So you were always thinking about doing it all by yourself with no backup musicians or anything.
No, I mean, I guess if I had the luxury of taking out a full band every time I wanted to go out, but I don't, and especially if that was going to be, I mean, it started off with, yeah, let's make it a full band production. Let's even incorporate some theater into it or something. And
Yeah.
then when COVID happened, it was like, okay, fuck all that. I'll just
That's
do it. I'll just do it with just a guitar and a keyboard, and that's it. So
Man, it's pretty cool. I mean, the whole video is pretty cool. But I also have here the rock opera version, and I think this is how you record it. And there's a song that I absolutely adore. It's beautiful. It's called "Out in the Open." So let me share it with everybody because it's so beautiful, and we need to hear this. Let me see if I can make this work. I'm gonna share my screen with you guys, and please let me know if everything's correct. Let's see. I have it here. Share sound. Okay, here we go. So we're talking with Butch Walker, and this is Out in the Open, and this is beautiful.
now here we are.
I mean, I don't really know how else to put it, but I'm gay, and I just want to be able to have that conversation with you because I feel like we're close enough now that I finally feel like I'm at that point where I'll be able to tell you, and I just want to be able to have you behind me 100%. I just don't want you to be weird or not love me or, I just want to be able to call you and not be weird and be able to talk to you about anything, and I just want everything to still be kind of normal.
I remember in my younger years walking to a city pool. Got yelled and called a faggot from this kid I knew in school. His dad and dad before him, they lived outside of town. With a lack of education, yeah, the options weren't around. Sometimes I'd see that boy in class with bruises on his eyes, red and pretty swollen, tears tangled up in pride. Repeat and memorize rhetoric about it being God's way. If I don't follow the good book, then there'll be some hell to pay. I don't blame you how you turned out. A habit's hard to break. You were born into what you became, and I was born this way. I can try to show compassion before you take that shot. Out here in the open, whether I like it or not. Driving back from a party with friends on a Saturday night, I slowed down to a wreckage in the coldest part of night. That boy who called me faggot, like bleeding, almost dead. He wrecked that truck from drinking and the windshield met his head. Well, I pulled him from the driver's seat, said help is on its way. Put my hand up upon his chest and said it'll be okay. When he focused on my likeness, I could see it in his eyes. Everything he taught to hate would finally save his life. And the irony about this, I
Nice.
Are we having a conversation?
So beautiful, man. So beautiful. I really love this song. I love it, man.
Thank you. Thanks, man.
And that's I was gonna swear, that's a freaking awesome guitar solo, man. It's amazing. Really,
I
really
got
cool.
lucky.
Did you improvise that?
I did. I got lucky. Like every once in a while, like you improvise one and go like, "Oh, I'm not re-recording that."
That's right. That's right. Yeah. I mean, I can tell you were inspired, man. And I mean, the lyrics and everything, it's pretty deep, man. I really enjoy that, that way of telling stories. I think that's the most difficult thing when you're writing songs, because I mean, everyone can be cryptic, right? Or can, be, like you said before, vague about things. But when you're actually telling a story with a beginning and an end, I think, and make it musical, that's a very, very, very cool skill to have. And I think you have it, man. That's amazing.
Oh, thank you, man. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. So why don't you tell me a little bit about what's the idea behind Are We Having a Conversation? Because that keeps repeating over and over again, in between songs in the whole project.
Well, interestingly, that song that you just heard, that was one of the first songs written for it, and I didn't start out with it being a concept record or a rock opera or anything. It was just a collection of songs, and so far I had written, Gridlock and Pretty Crazy and that song Out in the Open. And I realized there was a pattern, of like, my manager was like one who made me realize, it sounds like you're making a rock opera. And I was like, I wasn't, but I am now. And so we started kind of figuring it out, and I actually kind of sent it around to a couple of friends of mine. I sent it to a friend of mine in Australia. I sent it to a friend of mine in New York, and a couple other people. And I was like, "Hey, what do you think of this?" And these were people I really valued their opinions. And it started. That was when it started becoming a concept record, like a rock opera. And one of my friends was like, he kept saying that over and over again about He's actually one of the voices that you hear at the beginning of the record, and the like montage of people saying, "Are we having a conversation?" Yeah. And the whole record just became about that, about like, we haven't been able to have a conversation about some of these issues here in America, especially. And so that's sort of what the record implies, is that it's very black and white. And and so that's where that came from. And then I just ran with that, and I started putting dialogue in between the songs, and that's when it got really fun.
Cool, man. I think that's I'm gonna go away from the music just for a minute, but I think what you're talking about in this work, it's happening not only in the States, it's happening kind of worldwide, and it's kind of sad, right? Because everything's becoming kind of, like you said, black or white, and it's kind of it's worrying. At least I'm worried about that. It's like I don't know. It should be a little different. People should try to hear each other a little more.
I agree. And it's been tough. We've had a very divisive, situation over here for the last, like I said, about 5 years now. And it's been tough to have conversations with even your loved ones and your relatives and stuff that have different viewpoints, because everything's made it so divided and so angry. Everyone's gotten so angry that they lash out at each other, instead of just, you can't really have a civil conversation, or have dinner around the table and have a casual conversation come up about things. It has to be a screaming match now.
Yeah, that's right.
And that sucks.
It sucks, man. It really does, because like, for instance, a Thanksgiving dinner or a Christmas dinner, things like that are complicated nowadays. I can tell, but you're at least you are doing your, putting your grain of sand, right, with your music, and that's beautiful. That's good, because music at the end of the day always brings people together, right? And that's a beautiful thing. That's one of the things why we're doing what we're doing.
Exactly.
That's right, man. Okay, well, let's talk about the discount code for Vegatrem that we have this week. And I have to tell you guys that this is good till Sunday. Okay, so you guys can use this code till Sunday. So the code is Butch23, BUTCH23, all lower caps, Butch23. El código descuento para esta semana hasta el domingo es Butch23, todo en minúsculas, BUTCH23. I said it in Spanish as well, because we have a lot of people.
Of course. By the way, your English is great. I mean,
thank you, man.
Most people over here can't even speak English that well.
Well, this is, as I told you before, I spent almost 7 years in Texas, and those Texans taught me how to speak a little bit. Sometimes I still make some mistakes, but it's all right. I mean, at least I can have a conversation with you.
Hey, man, at least you're putting forth the effort. I mean, a lot of people don't think about that when they hear somebody, when American hears someone with a thick accent, but they're speaking in English, and you have to remind them, like, they put in hours and hours of work to learn another language.
Oh yeah, man. Oh yeah.
I'm just as guilty of it. I don't know a single other language other than English, and I'm so bummed. I got one of these days, I've made it my mission to spend an entire summer abroad learning another language. So maybe it'll be Spain. So
you're totally invited. Spain is beautiful in the summer, so you're totally invited. And we're gonna have so much fun if you come. We're gonna take you so many cool places, and we're gonna teach you some Spanish if you're interested.
Yes.
It's funny enough, when I moved to the States, I learned a lot of English just by listening talk radio. And it was a lot of talk radio all the time, and I learned a lot, so that helped me a big deal. I also, before we go, because we're gonna wrap it, before we go, I also wanted to ask you how you feeling with your Vegatrem. Are you liking it or not? What's your feedback with it?
I love them. Unfortunately, I'm not at my studio in Tennessee today, which is where most of my guitar arsenal is, and I have I love them. They're amazing. I have it on I have two Strats that I have them on right now, and always kind of had a problem with Strat standard tremolos, with the non-locking ones, staying in tune, and also just the feel of them. They're a little stiff and whatever, and the bars get all wiggly, and they just always were a pain. But I love Strat guitars, and so when I put these on there, which I did myself, which is saying a lot, because that's how easy it is, because I'm not a luthier. I don't know how to build. I mess guitars up more than I help them when I try to do stuff. So I did them myself in like 20 minutes, and it's just such a great. It's everything I loved about tremolos when I was coming up in the 80s and on my guitars, because I had Floyd Rose tremolos on a lot of my guitars, which require really mangling the guitar. Like you have to route into it. You have to cut it out. You have to cut out the nut up top. You'll never be able to get the guitar back to stock without seeing the scars. So, and also I don't want to deal with a locking nut and all that. I just want it to work like a regular tremolo, but stay in tune, and so when I put those on and got them set up right and everything, they're so great, and they work great. The feel and the action on them feels great. It's really a beautiful thing, and they stay in tune. And that's the thing, is if I use a tremolo a lot as a vibrato bar. It's not like I'm not doing a bunch of dive bombs on it all the time, but I do definitely play it with a very subtle, almost like a 50s vibrato style, like you would with a Bigsby. And to me, that's my favorite kind of use of the tremolo. And so I love it because it just feels so smooth and it's solid, and they're great, man. Great product. I'm super happy to have them on my guitars, and now I've got to put them on the rest of my tremolo guitars. So
Okay. Well, we're so glad that you belong to the Vegatrem family, because it's a pleasure having you, and having you using the VT1, the Vegatrem tremolo. And also, I have to tell you, when you put that, you remember when you uploaded that first video on Instagram, you are a guitar influencer, so a lot of people reached out to us, after you posted that video, interested about the Vegatrem and everything, so we recruited a couple more guitar players thanks to you, so thank you very much. But yeah, because they were
awesome.
They were curious about it, and they reached out to us, and so it's
That's
pretty
great.
nice. And it's
That's awesome.
You're one of our best ambassadors, so I wanted to thank you, man.
Thank you so much. Thanks for saying that.
Okay, well, so I think we're gonna, let me see. I'm gonna write some of the comments that people left here. Well, there's a lot of comments here. People, saludos desde Las Palmas, from an island in Spain. Saludos, Las Palmas. Nice to see you again, Butch. I hope you will come back to Europe soon. People in Europe they want to see you. Hi from Barcelona. As I hear talk you about music business and a personal experience, I asked to myself, what's your opinion about today production? Well, we talked about that, the overproduction and the auto-tune abuse. I mean, you talked about that earlier as well. Well, there's a lot of people commenting and everything. If you wanna say something else, you can do so if you want.
Well, no, just thank you for everyone tuning in and checking it out, and obviously I'm always good to talk about gear and studio and songwriting and anything music. It's always fun for me. So otherwise I end up just talking to a wall anyway about it.
Okay, well, man, it was very fun for me, especially personally. It's been a very fun one, very good episode, and I really thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I wish you all the luck in the world. Please, when you come to Spain, let us know, because we're gonna take you places.
I would love that. I will count. I'll leave you to it for sure.
Please, because it's gonna be fun for sure.
Awesome. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Thank you very much, Butch. And
All right.
you guys, next time, see you next week. So next Thursday, we're going to be doing this again. So till then, be safe, have fun.